Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler. This episode, we look at something that's been added new to my collection. In fact, a few somethings added new to my collection. We correct what I think I've told you wrong in the past, so that we can see specifics on what made that information incorrect and what the actual correct information is. And just kind of recap some of the really early stuff in this series now that we are dealing with an HD camera rather than the craptastic camera I had when the series began way back in the day. We're focusing here on A New Hope on VHS and Betamax. Okay, so that's the topic way back in August of 2013 that I covered on this show in episode number 3 of From the Star Wars Home Video Library. And then we're taking it forward to also look at the releases that came after that episode's coverage when we looked at the first VHS trilogy, where it wasn't a box set, but you could buy all 3 films, starting in 1986, and re-releases from then on. We're going to take a look at that as well. That was the topic covered way back when in episode number 4 of this series on September 1st of 2013. So we're looking back about 3 years to add some clarity to a topic we've seen before. As we know, on both Blu-ray and VHS, the first release of the entire film of A New Hope came in 1982, 5 years after the film was in theaters. Again, we have that pattern. It is 5 years from the time that A New Hope is in theaters to the time it shows up on VHS. It is 4 years for The Empire Strikes Back. It is 3 years for Return of the Jedi. It is 1 year for Phantom Menace. And then Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith are the same year. Same thing with the Clone Wars film. But then now, because of releases in December, we're seeing the next year being the release time for The Force Awakens and presumably for Rogue One. But 5 years had gone by, people were clamoring for it, so there was a rental-only version of A New Hope that was originally released. And sometimes stores would sell it to people by calling it a lifetime rental and just saying, hey, you're renting it, but you never have to bring it back. People were paying pretty big money for this. The VHS version was this, Video Rental Library. The Betamax version, very similar, was this. These tended to be somewhat distinctive in their look, right? Red logo, dark label, same thing here. Oftentimes black tape and sort of a brownish, grayish flap on the top. And somewhat similar for Betamax with a similar logo here. No logo in this case on the edge and a flap top that doesn't match the color of the rest. We then saw, later in 1982, a retail release that you were supposed to buy of A New Hope, and that was one of those drawer cases. Looks like this, 20th Century Fox Video up there at the top. VHS, because it's a drawer and one of those little things that when you pull it out kind of disappears because it's just a hole in the packaging here. Same thing on the side, stereo, mono, compatible, all that stuff. But in a drawer case, you open up the drawer case, and then there's your tape inside. Again, similar with the dark and red label, mismatch. You have your Betamax version of the same thing, similar packaging here, in fact, identical packaging on the top, with Beta showing through on the side from the drawer underneath, and then the tape itself. Again, no logo, or no label, dark with red label here, in this case, not a mismatched color on this particular copy. Then we had the changeover from 20th Century Fox Video to CBS Fox Video, and we saw a reissue of drawer case versions back in 1983. For VHS, that was this, recognizable because it is wider than most regular VHS releases, because it is still a drawer case. Similar to the look of the one from 82, but CBS Fox up here instead of 20th Century Fox Video. And down here on the side, instead of having it in white where it says stereo mono compatible, it has a red line, not a triangle, that says stereo mono compatible as well. Again, you pop it open though, it is a drawer case. Again, dark label, in this case mismatched colors again, and no label on the edge. Essentially, the product from the previous year just put into new packaging. Same thing with Betamax, right? In this case, to cover up that red line, we have a sticker of a blue triangle that says Beta, Beta on the side, Beta on the other side. Again, drawer case, and in this case, mismatched colors, but no label, dark label. Again, in this case, mismatched colors. Now that got us to the end of 1983. Then we hit 1984, and they start being in those slimmer regular VHS packages. And when I showed you this before, I was able to basically show you this. Okay? That they have the corner here that's in red that says Hi-Fi Stereo Digitally Mastered. And I pointed out how that's different than just having the red line instead of a triangle that just said Stereo Mono Compatible. And pointed out how they went through, and because in theaters they had the stereo mix, and the stereo theatrical mix was what was on those original releases in 82 and 83, but those were missing C-3PO's line about how the tractor beam system worked. They went through and did a new remastering of the audio track for A New Hope, and in doing so added C-3PO's line back in. Then we saw those releases coming out in those regular cases, and I believe that I told you at the time that the first of those was in 1984, and then we saw a re-release of that same thing in 1986, right, which was alongside the first release of Return of the Jedi on home video. And then that sometime shortly after that, 87, 88, 89, I tend to think probably 87-ish, there was another re-release of the same thing. And the only way to tell the differences from 86 and the one that came after is basically that one of them has a 10th anniversary trailer for the Star Wars films tacked on at the end of the film. That's 1986. And then the one that followed has that same trailer at the beginning of the film. So the copy that I have is one from that later release. Thing is, though, I believe I was assuming that all the releases after the drawer cases were the same down here and had gone through that remastering. There's actually one more step in between that I believe that I missed. Now I have those, and I can show you those, along with some of the difficulties in trying to figure out which ones you have of some of those later releases. Turns out that in 1984, we had a release that looks a lot like this, but wasn't exactly this. In 1984, they released this one. Now, make the packaging comparison. They look very similar, almost identical, but check out the red triangles down there at the bottom. The one here on your left says Hi-Fi Stereo. The one on the right says Hi-Fi Stereo Digitally Mastered. This one, okay, is a digitally mastered copy. This is from 86 or later, 86 to 89, and this does have C-3PO's line reinserted. But however, that mastering process to create a version with C-3PO's line actually took place in 1985. So the 1984 release that still says Hi-Fi Stereo, but does not have digitally mastered, this one is in a slim case, looks very similar, but does not have the new digitally mastered soundtrack, does not have C-3PO's line. I actually went through and checked all these myself, and no, this does not have C-3PO's line. In fact, here is the exact digitized footage from this copy, with no digitally mastered, of the scene in question.
He says he's found the main controls to the power beam that's holding the ship here. He'll try to make the precise location appear on the monitor.
I don't think your boys can help. I must go alone.
He says he's found the main controls to the power beam that's holding the ship here. He'll try to make the precise location appear on the monitor.
The tractor beam is coupled to the main reactor in 7 locations. A power loss at one of the terminals will allow the ship to leave.
I don't think your boys can help. I must go alone.
See? No C-3PO line. Now, as far as how you can recognize this, that gets a little tricky. Because here's this copy. Mismatched color, no label on the side, and the white label with Star Wars in black. Now that is the same kind of logo that you're going to see on one of those later copies. Okay, so just looking at the tape itself will do you absolutely no good looking at the label. But in hunting this down, I had somebody say, well, you know, I thought I had one of those that had a different label on it. So I hunted down another copy of the exact same thing. Hi-Fi Stereo, no digitally mastered, 1984. Pull this one out. Colors aren't mismatched, but notice, aside from no label here, this one has that earlier darker colored label with CBS Fox on it. So apparently, around 1984, prior to doing the digitally mastering, they put out this version that says Hi-Fi Stereo without digitally mastered on it, but they must have been in the transition between labels because some have those original labels that you see from 82 and 83, Some have the labels you see afterwards, starting around 86, consistently on all the different copies out there. Then 85 comes around and they do the digital mastering. Then you get the digitally remastered edition, not THX remastered, but the digitally remastered soundtrack edition, which we see with digitally mastered on the corner, showing up 86 up through 89. Now, you might say, well, okay, 86 up to 89. We know there's an edition in 86. We know there's one sometime after that between 87 and 89. We know the only difference is where that 10th anniversary commercial is. Surely there's a way to look at the packaging or the tapes and tell the difference. Well, first, looking at the tape, you will not be able to tell the difference. That's going to be your logo regardless. So that's not going to do you any good. I thought maybe a packaging variant can make the difference. But you look at this, front, back, one side, it's going to look the same as other copies. But then you look at the other side, and this is a new copy I just picked up, barcode. Huh. Well, exact same thing. The one that I showed you back in episode 3 of this series, exact same thing. Neither edge has a barcode. Surely this is the difference. And one of these is from 86, and the other one is from later. Surely a packaging difference, even if it's just a barcode, will tell me which one it is. No. No. Both of these are from after 86, because you put it in the player, and the first thing it plays is that 10th anniversary commercial. So there seems to be, unless somebody else has found it, and I've asked around and nobody seems to know what it might be, there doesn't seem to be a way to look at a 1986 copy, or one of the ones coming after 86 up through 89, to tell, just by looking at the packaging, which version you're going to get. You're going to have to ask the person selling it, praying they still have a working VCR, hey, where is the trailer? At the beginning or at the end? It's going to be a nightmare to try to track down those two if you're looking for those different releases. That said, to get an actual 1984 release is going to be much easier because that is the one that doesn't have digitally mastered, just hi-fi stereo. And whether it has this type of label or it has the darker color one, don't worry, same release. Yes, I checked both. Both are missing the line. Both have the same CBS Fox intro also that's different than the other ones, which looks like this. So it should be easy to tell 1984 pre-digital mastering, pre-line added back in from the ones that came later. But good luck telling the ones that came later apart until we get to 1990 and the whole packaging scheme changes. And yes, for those who are curious, there was a Betamax edition right alongside these in 1984. Hi-Fi stereo, no digitally mastered, Beta labeled on the side, and Beta tape inside. The one I've got happens to be a dark label. There's probably some out there with the white labels also. So to recap, original VHS rental release, easy to spot because of the rental packaging, and they've got the little serial numbers and stuff on that. Then same year, 1982, there's the first drawer box edition. It does say stereo mono compatible in the bottom left corner, except it is in white. 1983, they reissue it. That one has the red line instead of a triangle that says stereo mono compatible. Also a drawer case. 1984, bottom corner will have a red triangle that says hi-fi stereo but not digitally mastered. 86, 87, 88, 89, that era, red triangle in the corner, hi-fi stereo does say digitally mastered. And the only way to tell the difference between the two releases in that window are the placement of the 10th anniversary trailer on beginning or end. Got it? I know it sounds really nitpicky, but if you're going to be collecting all of these and you're sort of a completist at heart, this can make a huge difference in trying to hunt these down, and I wanted to make sure that I had that clarity presented here for you. So with that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.